Okay, so I thought this time, for the Labor Day weekend, before we had done one of Jeffrey's books, How to See Yourself as You Really Are, and continued it from one Labor Day to the next Labor Day. I don't know how many years that took, but quite a few. But this time I thought to do the 6 perfections and do one each year, although I doubt I would get through one in each year. And since many of you have already heard, not all of you, but many of you have already heard the 6 perfections as it's presented in the Tibetan system, I thought I would, and reading the Tibetan translations, I thought I would do it this time from the Chinese translation and from a different text. So it's still the 6 perfections, but it's, because it's a different author, it's presented in a slightly different way. So the author in this case is Nagarjuna. Yeah, so you can't beat that. And it's coming from a text that is not found in the Tibetan tradition, but is found in the Chinese canon. Okay, so I will tell you more about that text after we do our prayers and motivation and short meditation. But it's, quite a beautiful text, and I have no idea why it's not in the Tibetan canon. So let's create our motivation. Since this is one of the most important things that we do, because our motivation really will determine the value of what we do. So think for a minute, why do you want to learn about the 6 perfections? Why is that valuable to you? And how do you anticipate learning about the 6 perfections will influence how you live your life and the effect that your actions have on other living beings? And here, since we're concentrating specifically on generosity this weekend, how will generosity influence your life and how your actions influence others? And beyond how you would influence others this lifetime by learning about generosity, how about from now until awakening and after awakening, how cultivating and perfecting generosity will enable you to benefit sentient beings and cultivate that wish to do so. So, this text, and this is only 14 chapters of Nagarjuna's treatise on the path. Actually, it's his commentary on the 25,000 line Mahaprajna Paramita text. Okay, which doesn't say how many chapters Nagarjuna wrote, but this is only 14 of many, many, many chapters. Okay. And so Nagarjuna lived in India in the 2nd century AD, and he was one of the most, perhaps the most important and sage who really directed how Buddhism was going to develop in India through his interpretation of the nature of reality. Actually, I shouldn't say through his interpretation, through his fleshing out what the Buddha said about the nature of reality. And his teachings spread to Tibet, but much later than they spread to China. Buddhism didn't go to Tibet until like the 6th century from India, and it went from India to China beginning like the 1st century BC. So it was in China quite a bit longer. And Kumarajiva was the one who translated Nagarjuna's text from Sanskrit into Chinese. And Kumarajiva, he was Ser-Indian. So I didn't know what that term meant. I looked it up. It's the area between India and China. So specifically those central Asian countries that are north of Tibet, like the area of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and so on. And so that whole area, from Afghanistan all through Central Asia, was Buddhist for many, many centuries. So he was, Kumarajiva was born in the 4th century in that area. And he became a monk when he was 7 years old. Yeah, when his mother became a nun. So that's pretty good, you start out early, okay? And his mother took him to northern India to learn more there from the scholars. So, and then from northern India, he took his ordination as a bhikshu there when he was 20. And then in later years, he went to Chang'an, which, what's the modern name of it? I can't remember, but a place in China where a lot of the translations were done. Okay, Chang'an is the old name. It has a new name now. I think it starts with an X. But anyway, okay, so Kumarajiva was one of the chief translators of Nagarjuna's work, and especially the Madhyamaka tradition into China. And he directed a highly organized, imperially sponsored translation bureau there, consisting of 500 monastic editors and scribes. He had something going there, Imagine the amount that they could translate, and make available to the public with so many people engaged in doing that. Of course, they didn't have computers. They had to write out everything by hand. And many of the texts came to them verbally at that time. It wasn't until Xuanzang Xuanzang was what, 7th, 8th century, that more and more written texts came. The written texts came early, but Xuanzang was the one who brought a whole lot of them. And so a lot of the texts were memorized. And they you have the Vanakas who recited the text by memory. Really quite amazing when you think about it, and how dependent we are now on written material and audio material and recordings, and how our memory does not hold things very well. Yeah. Okay, so he did all this translation, and really is quite remarkable when you think about it, especially these Madhyamika teachings, which were so important for teaching the nature of reality. Okay, so those teachings came with the perfection of wisdom, the last of the sixth. We're starting with the first one, generosity, because generosity is just general generosity is something that is valued in all religions, by all people. Everybody thinks it's a good virtue. Yeah, it doesn't matter you're religious or not, what religion you are, or no religion. People think generosity is a good virtue. And so it comes first. Also, because it's said to be the easiest. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at my mind, is it easy to be generous? There's a lot of other stuff going on that interfere with the generosity. Okay. So I might respect generosity, respect those who are generous, aspire to be like that. But when it comes down to it, I think about myself first. Yeah. And what I want and what I can have, and then others. Okay, so this is one of the big things we have to overcome, really, to be generous. Okay, so the perfection of giving. This whole book isn't about just giving. Giving is it's okay. Yeah, giving is this much of the book. Okay, so we're not going to get through all of it. Okay, so we're going to start by Nagarjuna asks the question, what is meant by giving, or dana? Dana is the Sanskrit word. You'll see dana baskets around here. Okay, dana means generosity. It means, a way to practice generosity. So what is meant by dana, or giving? Dana refers to an instance of giving wherein there is a corresponding instance of wholesome intentionality. This is what is meant by dana. Okay, so dana is, or generosity is, a mind, a virtuous mind, a wholesome mind with a wholesome intention to give. Okay, so usually we think of generosity as either the physical or verbal action of giving. Those follow from the mind. Okay, so everything is rooted in the mind. So, having a generous intention. So some people say, well, if you have a generous intention, you should be able to solve the poverty of everybody. And only when everybody's poverty is solved have you completed the perfection of generosity. And the Buddha said no, because that's kind of impossible. But it's working on our mind so that our mind has that intention, and our mind can give without any reservation, without any hesitancy, without any ifs, ands, and buts. Okay. So there's different types of generosity. So, and he lists different types throughout this, so different ways of dividing it. So one way is the generosity from the desire realm. That's the realm we're in, where people are completely, going bonkers over sense objects. Okay, and then the desire of the dana, or generosity, of the form realm, where people have states of meditative stability and their minds are much more satisfied. And then the dana of the formless realm, where beings are very deeply involved in their samadhi. They are not liberated beings. They haven't realized the nature of reality yet, but they're in very deep samadhi for that lifetime. Later, they go down again, okay? But generosity in the desire realm, well, where we live, when you think of it all, because we say desire realm, where we live, and we just kind of like take that for granted. But when you think about it, when you really look how we live our lives, we are so glued to the external world. And we just go through life always involved with, things I'm seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching. And these are like the most important things. And, my happiness depends on these desire objects of desire externally, what I can grab onto that is going to make me happy. And my suffering also comes from these sense objects in the desire realm that impinge on my happiness, and I have to get rid of those. Okay, so every day, when we wake up, our mind automatically goes to, what am I going to encounter today? We don't go to, what am I going to think about today? Or what is the state of my mind? Or do I have kindness and compassion in our mind? No, that's not how we wake up. We wake up with, what external thing can make me happy? And this alarm clock is not one of them. Okay, it's one of the things that makes me unhappy. Slam and get it, shut it off. Okay, so we're in always this incredible push and pull with the external world. We really have very little peace because of it. And we're also not very in touch with our own inner world. Because we're so obsessed with these external objects, because we think happiness and suffering comes from them. We don't realize that happiness and suffering come from inside here. Okay. And so we're out of touch with what's going on inside. And then we wonder why we're so unhappy. It's because we're following the wrong road. There's a path that leads to happiness, and we're not on it. Okay. So then another way of dividing giving is giving that is pure and that which is impure. Okay. So as for impure giving, and here he goes into a long list of, well, it's not that long, but longer than we want it probably, of how our mind creates obstacles to being generous. All these other kind of thoughts and motivations that arise that prevent us just from practicing generosity. Okay, so impure giving. It may involve superficial giving in which one takes no interest. Okay, pass the ketchup. Here. That's it. We don't even take the opportunity to think, oh, I can benefit somebody by passing the ketchup. It's something small, it's not earth-shaking, but we don't even think of it as, this is an opportunity for me to connect with somebody else. We have no interest in it. It's like, here it is. Okay. Other things, it may perhaps be done for the sake of obtaining wealth. Do you ever give with the intention to receive something back? Yeah. And especially around Christmas time or people's birthdays. Yeah, we feel obliged to give, not because we, with many people, not because we really want to give, but because we're supposed to give. And social convention means if I give, then they're going to give me something back. Yeah. So I give something. Yeah. I don't know if you calculate, but this is what happened in my family, and I unfortunately learned it, is you give something that is nice enough so it doesn't look like you're being cheap in regards to that person. Yeah. But something that doesn't cost more than what you think they're going to give you in return. Okay, in other words, you don't want to be overly generous, and what they give you in return doesn't cost as much. Okay, so just these are, we got to be honest here. It's very interesting to check up what goes through our mind. Okay, or perhaps we give because we feel ashamed. Okay, we don't feel like we measured up to somebody's expectations, so we give them a gift as a way of like, will you still like me? Am I still a good person? Okay, I blew it there, but I'm giving you a gift. Yeah. Or perhaps we give as a means of reproving others. Yeah. We want to show them somehow how they were wrong. So maybe somebody didn't give us something, so we give them something as a way of indicating, you should have given me something first. Yeah, I'm maybe superior and you should give something first. And I'm trying to humiliate you and show how you blew it. Okay. Or perhaps one gives out of terror. Yeah, there's somebody who's being overpowering, who bossy, who threatens you, and you give something to that person to placate them. Okay, we can see this, in the national, what's going on, how some people now are really lashing out and saying horrible things in the media about other people. And then those people turn around and brown nose. Okay, I'm not mentioning names, but you should be able to figure out who I'm talking about. Yeah, so people are afraid of somebody who's being a bully. Yeah, but they want to be in that person's good graces because they'll get something out of it if they are. So then they are very generous, especially with their speech, praising that person, how wonderful that person is, da 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 da. Okay, so one gives out of fear, yeah, placate somebody who could harm you. One gives to draw favorable attention to oneself. Yeah, I will give a huge amount to this charity. And then when they build the hospital, they build the community center, whatever it is, my name will be on a plaque in the entryway. Or if I don't have so much money that I can get my name on the plaque, or how they have the hall of a building will be named after who sponsored it, and big letters on the top, So you give, and then everybody knows, gee, you're rich, and you do that. But even if you can't do that, often on the back side of the building, they'll have a list of all the donors, in smaller type according to how much you give, of course. Okay, because it's all based on the amount that you give, not on your motivation, but the amount. Okay, and okay, you need to know sometimes I go off on tangents. Yeah. But one of the tangents is how charities often raise money, and this goes for Buddhist temples as well and Dharma centers. If you get so much, if you give such and such amount, you are a bronze member, and we will give you this kind of gift. If you give more, then you are a silver member, and your gift is upped a bit. Then you get the gold membership, and then you get a really nice gift. Then you get to platinum, yeah, and then wow, then you get to have lunch with the teacher, or whatever charity it is, the CEO of the whatever, yeah. And so people often give in order to appear important and to appear wealthy, so that everybody knows, oh, you must be wealthy. Look, you have this named after you. And so that may not be the only reason people give. People may really believe in what the charity or whatever, what they're really doing. But the subtext that comes in to pollute the giving is what I'm going to get in return, which in this case is, some status in the community. Okay, so to draw favorable attention to oneself. Perhaps one gives out of a fear of being killed. Okay, that could happen too. Yeah. You're kidnapped, you're arrested, whatever it is, and you give to whoever has control over you to prevent being killed. Perhaps one gives with the intention of manipulating someone into feeling pleased. Oh ho. Okay. This is people pleasers, one. Okay. How we manipulate people into feeling pleased so that they will like us. Okay. Not because we necessarily like them, or even if we like them a lot, want them to be happy, but we want them to like us. Okay, so the currency is, I give you a gift and you think I'm wonderful in return. Okay, so this happens in all sorts of social relationships. Yeah, dating is perhaps one of the most prominent ones. How do you win somebody's favor? You start giving them gifts, okay? But it happens, also with your parents, with your siblings, with your colleagues, kind of the gift is, it's a way of manipulating, yeah? We want them to think well of us. Okay, perhaps one gives out of a feeling of obligation. Okay, this because one happens to be rich and of a noble birth. Okay, so for somebody who's quite rich, they feel obliged to be philanthropic. And this used to be the feeling among the rich, like in the last century, the beginning of the 20th century, the 18th century, back then, of, if you were a Rockefeller, if you were give me some other name, a Carnegie, a Vanderbilt, Hearst, yeah, Hilton, yeah. So if you were one of those people, then there was this feeling that since you had gotten all this wealth from previous generations, and you were upper class, then you had an obligation to share some of it with other people. So Uh, if there's, you can tease this one out. There's the people who have this who don't really want to give, but they give to ensure their family name and their reputation, and so that other people in the family don't get mad at them for being cheap. Okay. Um, and then there's people who have a much more virtuous mind, who think, wow, I got all this wealth and I didn't earn it myself. It just came to me. And, society is very unfair. The way wealth is allocated in society is quite unfair. And so I want to, I feel obliged to give some of what I got through no effort of my own to benefit other people. So that would be a virtuous motivation. Okay. So you give, or perhaps one gives as a means of struggling for dominance. Okay, so you're competing with somebody, especially if you want to get votes or you want to get something, then you become so generous. And not just even with material wealth, with praise, okay? With giving people what they want, in doing favors for them, okay? So you're really struggling to be dominant over somebody else. But again, this is a form of manipulation, isn't it? Or giving out of jealousy. You're jealous because somebody else has been more generous and gets more praise and more attention than you do. I wonder if that ever happens among some of the really rich people, if there's some competition in who can give, Or you give out of hatred, maybe to humiliate somebody. Or you give, you really, hatred. You get somebody else hooked on drugs. Yeah, you give them drugs, you give them alcohol because you don't like them and you want them to develop an addiction to this. This happens a lot. Okay. Perhaps one gives out of arrogance, desiring to elevate oneself above others. So this is, I give to draw attention to myself so that people know how good I am. I am so magnanimous. One gives out of an attempt to lend efficacy to ritual incantations and prayers. Okay, so this is what I call doing business with the Buddha. Okay, so you want something favorable for yourself and your family. And so you pray to the Buddha, or people pray to God, or whoever, Brahma, whoever they pray to. Um, and you say, please, if I win the lottery, if my daughter gets a good job, if my son marries a nice woman, if we're able to move into a good neighborhood, if, the cancer is healed completely, if the kidney disease vanishes, Buddha, God, Allah, Ishvara, please make this happen. And if you do that, then I will give grand donations to the temple and, grand donations to you to express my gratitude. Okay. So many people do this. Yeah. And it's seen in society as like quite normal and something that people do. But when you look at it, okay, it's first Buddha or whoever you're praying to. First, you make me win the lottery, heal my disease, bring all these other nice things to my family. And if you do your work, then I'll make the offering. Okay. So it's not giving to the triple gem out of a feeling of faith and reverence that you want to give because you respect their qualities and you want to generate their qualities. But, Buddha, first you give the goods and then I'll pay back with an offering. I'm expressing it in a very crass way, but I think the mind that thinks that is often quite crass. Yeah. Or one gives in an attempt to do away with misfortune and gain good fortune. So this is what I just said was an example of that. Yeah. Or you give in order to gain a following. Oh, ho. Yeah. So actually, in one of the Bodhisattva practices, they talk about how to spread the Dharma and gain disciples when you become qualified. And one of the first things is by giving. Okay. Now, if you're somebody who is doing it for the right intention, yeah, not because you want a following to make yourself big, but because it's a way of helping people, helping to ease people into the Dharma, because when people receive presents, then they become interested in something, okay? So it can be done with a virtuous motivation in that way. Or it could be done to convert people, okay, or to gain a following. And we see this very often in some groups who go to impoverished nations. And, they do a lot of very good social work and build schools and hospitals. And the work they do on the outside is quite beneficial to people. But the reason they're doing it is polluted, okay? It's so that these people will convert to my religion, okay? Or these people will follow my political party. Okay? So there's some ulterior aim there. And again, okay, I'll go on a tangent. It has come out recently about the schools that some of the Catholic and other Christian groups opened for the indigenous people in the US and in Canada, and how those kids were taken out of their own families and their own cultures and put in these schools and tried to convert them to Christianity. Not try, they made them, and try and take away their culture and give them Western Christian culture. Okay, so on one hand it looks good, they built schools, hospitals, and whatever. On the other hand, they separated these kids from their families, from their own cultures, from their own language. And so one reason this came to light was the number of graves they found in the schoolyards, of children who had been mistreated and died. Yeah. So Christian and Catholic groups especially, all throughout Africa, this is what has happened. Yeah, it happened in China. Yeah, it happened in Mongolia. Yeah, I grew up in California. There we have all these missions up the coast named after different saints. And what we were taught in school was here all these kind saints and monks coming and civilizing these uncivilized natives and giving them the glorious religion of Christianity, the one true, perfect faith, so that they won't go to hell. Yeah, and then again, really taking advantage of the indigenous people there in many, many ways that, they don't teach you in school. They teach you how magnanimous these people are. But when you scratch the surface, you see something else going on. Okay, so yeah, many people give with that kind of ulterior motive. I mean, I have some karma where very often on long plane flights, I am sitting next to some evangelical Christian, yeah, who tries to convert me. And they tell me that they're doing it out of compassion because they don't want me to go to hell. Yeah. So if I don't know if they're really thinking that, or again, if it's they were told by their church that this is what you're supposed to do and this is how you win God's graces, is by converting other people, especially because you're saving them from hell. And I remember one flight, I was sitting next to one man, and he just really kept on it. And then finally, I said to him, well, I said several things to him, but one of the things was, you're telling me that your kind and forgiving and magnanimous God is going to send me to hell, even though as a Buddhist nun, I keep morality and the same kind of moral principles that God told the Christians to follow. We keep them too. And yet, even though I'm trying to live a good life like that, God's going to send me to hell. He didn't really know what to say to that one. Okay. But yeah, you can see how I feel about generosity in order to manipulate conversion. So he was being generous with his speech, he wasn't trying to give me any presents. And one other time I was sitting next to one young man, yeah, and he was born again. He was telling me how he didn't get along with his mother, and after talking to him for a while, I understood why. Because all he could talk about was trying to convert somebody. And he was, his mother obviously didn't like it. But he wanted to be generous and give me a book. And I said, I will accept it if you will accept a Buddhist book in return. And he froze and he was quiet. And then you could hear his minister, talking through him. And he said, no, I cannot accept that. And then I said, well, then I can't accept your gift either. I wonder sometimes what happened to these people I meet on flights, yeah, how their lives go, because the mind is so inflexible. Okay. So, to gain a following. Okay. So you know a little bit of Dharma, and then you proclaim yourself as a teacher, because there's not many bodies, there's no formal kind of universal authorizing agency in America for Buddhist teachers. So, you can just go and declare yourself a teacher, I mean, usually a teacher gives you permission to teach or sends you out to teach. But many people, it's like, I want to be a Buddhist teacher. And so I want to be a famous one, and I want to have a lot of groupies following me. So teaching, giving the Dharma in order to obtain a following. That's really harmful. Giving in a disrespectful fashion in order to slight someone and make them feel humiliated. Okay, so there's certain ways to give that are prescribed in Buddhism. And they may not be with our culture, but when you think about them, sometimes they're things I want to adopt. One of them is when you give a gift, you give it with both hands. Okay, usually, in our culture, we just say, I want to give you a gift like this, or if you're left-handed, like this. Yeah. But in Buddhist culture, when you give with both hands. Yeah, so you're fully engaged in it. So it would be very disrespectful, if you gave a gift and it was, and also with one hand. But even in our culture, if you just said, I want to give you a gift. Yeah. Or, there's ways of showing your respect for somebody, and there's ways of humiliating people, through how you give. So this is one of making people humiliated. So here's a story too about how somebody gave and was very careful about this. So when I lived in Seattle, we were talking about giving, and one person had gone down to the Bay Area, and they were in Berkeley. And I don't know how Berkeley is now, but in those days, the streets were usually lined with people panhandling. And he came back and he told the story of there was one woman who was begging, panhandling, on the streets. And he didn't have a lot of money, so he, pulled out a dollar bill or something. And he looked her in the eye and he said, I don't have a lot, but I want to give you this, and put it in her hands, not in her pan, in her hands, and said, I wish I could give you more. And he gave with both hands. And she started crying. Yeah. Because the way he gave was much more important than the gift. Yeah. Because he looked at her and he spoke to her directly. And she could see that he cared. And that was much more important than the amount that was given. When you are on the streets, yeah, your self-esteem goes down very quickly, and you're usually treated very poorly. And so somebody just showing regular human respect is something new. So I do prison work, and I've been told there, one time I went in a prison in Wisconsin in particular, and we had everybody sitting in a circle, and I posed a question, and I was asking them their thoughts on this question. And somebody afterwards said, when you're in prison, nobody ever asks you for your idea about something. They tell you what to do. They tell you what to think. Yeah. And so just my asking, what do you think about this, was something, a way of showing respect in a world where they don't receive much respect. I didn't even think of it as, oh, I'm going to show respect. To me, this is just how you treat people. Yeah. But you see, in some conditions, in some situations, it can have a very profound effect on people when they're just treated as ordinary people would treat other ordinary people. Mm-hmm. So this is especially true, I think, with impoverished communities, with minority communities, of whatever kind of minority it is. Just regular human respect is the greatest gift, I think, very often. Okay. So I think we just had some, I don't know if it's all of our negative motivations exposed, yeah, by Nagarjuna. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. We have to own these, because in order to get beyond them, we have to recognize that we have them. Okay, pure giving, yeah, is any giving which stands in opposition to the above examples. Okay. So giving for the sake of the path to help people practice the Dharma is pure giving. When a pure mind arises which is devoid of any afflictions. Okay, so you're not manipulating. You don't hate somebody. You're not trying to get something for it for yourself. Okay, or when one is not seeking for any reward in this or future lives. So even, yeah, you're not giving so that you will create good karma, so that you will be wealthy in a future life. Okay, not even with that kind of motivation. That, from a Buddhist perspective, doing something to create the cause for benefit in a future life is considered a Dharma action. It's considered virtuous, okay, because it's looking beyond just grabbing onto things in this life. But even when we're able to give without thinking of, because they say that generosity is the cause of wealth. So if you're generous, you will be wealthy in a future life. So some people give now with the thought that they have faith in karma. This is why it is a virtuous action. But it's a narrow action because they're thinking of their own temporary wealth in the next life. Okay. So when we're able to give without even thinking of any kind of karmic benefit for ourselves, or when one does so out of reverence or compassion. So reverence, we really respect others. We want to express that. Um, and and compassion, because we care about somebody else's misery. So with these kinds of motivations, then that qualifies as pure giving. Okay, so you can see why we always start with our motivation before we do any action. Yeah, because we are usually so self-centered that if we do not stop and pause and ask ourselves, why am I doing something? That, self-centeredness just automatically takes over, and we do something with, what can I get out of this for myself? Okay, so that's why, one of the reasons why we always stop and check my motivation. In the morning when you first wake up, what's my motivation today? Is it just to get something for myself, whether it's temporary pleasure or fame or acclaim or people loving my ideas and thinking that I'm so bright? Why am I doing what I'm doing today? So that's quite important.
One of your stories that I have learned a lot from is the story about giving the torma to the person that you were trying to.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right? So within the context of that, within the context of really wishing to overcome my own challenges with a person, to give them a gift. Can you talk about what kind of mind, within the context of this pure and impure giving, what kind of mind
Okay.
one would want to develop to do that?
Okay. So let me tell the story first. Okay. So in monasticism, we sit in order of our the date when we were ordained, okay, according to seniority. It has nothing to do with how deep you are in the Dharma or realizations or anything. It's just according to when you were ordained. Okay. But what happens as a result of that is you wind up, if you're in a certain group, sitting next to the same people for the rest of your life. You know, on this side, the person who ordained before you, who's senior, and on this side, the person who ordained after you, who was junior. Okay, so I was helping, I together with one other nun, we were organizing in 1996 a program for Western Buddhist nuns in Bodh Gaya. And so I was organizing for the Western side, getting people there and registering. And she was organizing from the Indian side, you know, reserving the temple and getting loudspeakers and things like that. Okay. Now, the thing is, she was a very difficult person. And it wasn't just me who said this. It's not a projection of my mind. It's really objectively true that she's like this. Right? Isn't that true for all the people you don't like? It's objectively true. Nobody likes them. Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't with her like nobody liked her, but she was difficult. And she was the person that, although she had been ordained, you know, quite a number of years, people would say, she's a nun, but she's still so angry and disagreeable. And when somebody said that to one of us who knew her, the response was usually, you should have known what she was like before she ordained. Okay, so we were organizing this thing together. I don't know how that happened. I think it was because the two of us both had interest in doing something for Western nuns, so we teamed up. But she was difficult. Okay. Not to say, you know, I mean, of course, you all know that I was easygoing and cooperative and everything like that. So, you know, there was no problem from my side. But so there was tension. Yeah, just a little bit. But, you know, we sat next to each other, and we were going to be sitting next to each other for a long time. Probably until we died when we were in the, you know, because we had the same teacher. And so in those settings with him, there we were. So I felt really kind of like, you know, I don't really want to continue this. And I want to change the dynamic some way. So what came to mind was in some of our practices, the pujas that we do, we offered tormas. Okay, now a torma is a little offering cake. The Tibetans have their own style of making them. In the West, we often use cookies or something like that. Something nice that's tasty. You know, the Tibetans use tsampa, butter. Yeah, sometimes some sugar. Yeah. Anyway, so you to the different spirits, yeah, you want to show the spirits that you're not harmful, that you wish them well, and you say, please don't bother me when I'm doing my practice. So there's these things of you give a torma sometimes at the beginning of your practice, and you know, to kind of make peace with these evil spirits. And you make tormas at the end too, or offer tormas at the end. So I thought, okay, she's disagreeable. You know, I want to give her something that's like offering a torma to her, to show it's a demonstration of goodwill, and it's a demonstration of I'm not here to disturb you. Yeah, I want to have a good relationship, and I'm kind of asking you, please, not to disturb my virtuous activities. So I had some chocolate, and I just, as I got chocolate, because she liked it too, it was real easy to slip her some chocolate because she sat next to me. Okay, and yeah, so the motivation for doing that, how does that fit in? So in one way, we could say I was doing it for myself because I really didn't like the tension between us. In another way, yeah, it was also a show of goodwill and recognizing that she probably didn't like the tension between us either. Okay. And so, how well that worked, that I don't know. I can't remember, but I know that I felt a lot better after giving her a gift instead of seeing her as, oh, this difficult person I just want to get away from. We have to work together. Yeah. And so it helped me to change my attitude towards her. Does that answer your question?
Context of this list, I can recognize many of the impure givings that would actually come from a place where I thought I was actually doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a situation sort of like what you described. Yeah. So to look at, then what do I have to check? How do I change my mind? Because it is helpful. Mm-hmm. But how do what to change my mind to when I catch that?
Yeah.
Within the list of impure givings, right. Like that.
The way to change your mind is to think of the other person and what their life experience is and their unhappiness. And in this case, this was somebody who got into quarrels with different people. So somebody coming along and giving her a chocolate bar, I don't know how many people did that. They were afraid of her. Maybe people gave something for that reason. But, it helped me change my mind to one of seeing her good qualities. Yeah. So it's you change the focus of it. Yeah. There was talking about another way where you have to change your motivation is they often don't talk about receiving in the practice of generosity, but I think learning how to receive graciously is also an act of generosity. Okay? And because sometimes people want to give us something and we go, oh, no, 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 because we don't want to feel obliged to them. If they give me something, then next time they ask me to do a favor, I'm going to have to do it. So again, they want to be generous, but we block it. So there's all sorts of reasons for this, which we will explore a little later, of refusing generosity with with an impure motivation. Okay, but one time I remember somebody wanted to. I was hinting that I wanted something, and hinting is included in wrong livelihood for monastics. You're not supposed to hint. So I wasn't doing really blatant hinting, but everybody was going somewhere and I wanted to go and I didn't have any money, because it was an expensive thing and I wanted to go and they were all going and it was with one of my special teachers and I wanted to go. And so I didn't, do a big production, but I let it be known. And my motivation was maybe somebody will give me something. Well, sure enough, yeah, somebody offered to pay my way. And when they offered to pay my way, I felt so embarrassed. It was like, I had such an awful motivation and I succeeded in manipulating somebody and I don't like doing that. As soon as they offered, my reaction was, I can't accept it because I was asking for it with an impure motivation. And one of my other teachers was there at the time when this person offered, and I said no. And he looked at me and he said, "Why aren't you accepting it?" And I said, "Because I had a bad motivation, an impure motivation." And I was hinting. And my teacher looked at me and he said, he wants to create merit by giving to you. You need to accept, so you change your mind. And it was like, okay, when your teacher says something to you, you try and do it. And it's like, okay, I started out with a bad motivation, but now I have to change my motivation. And it's true, I'm a nun. People create merit by making offerings to the Sangha and to everybody else for that matter. And he wanted to create merit, and he was being kind. And I pushed that kindness away, which might have hurt his feelings. And so I really had to think about that and think, okay, I will accept, but not because of my manipulative motivation, but because I want him to know that his offering was something meaningful and appreciated. Yeah. So I accepted, uh, and then the whole thing wound up not happening. So he didn't wind up paying my way, and I didn't wind up going, and nobody went. But it was a big lesson for me. Yeah. Another time, I remember somebody, when I was leaving Italy, I'd been at the Dharma Center there for a long time, and I was leaving, and one of the other nuns there, I knew she didn't have very much money, and she wanted to, I went to say goodbye to her, and she pulled her watch off. It was just a regular watch. It wasn't anything fancy. And she said, "I want to give this to you." And I was like, "Oh, I can't accept it," because I knew she didn't have very much money. And but I said, "No, it's okay. I don't really need a watch. You see, I don't wear one. Keep it for yourself." And she kept saying, "No, no, no. I want to give it to you." And I would say, "No, please keep it. I really don't. No, I want to give it to you." So finally, what I did is I accepted it, because she really wanted to give. And I said, "Thank you very much. I appreciate your gift." And then I said, "And I want to create merit too, so I would like to offer this watch back to you." And I offered the watch back to her, and she accepted. Yeah. So, yeah, that's another way.
Just like back it up to the earlier story. I guess one of the things that helps me with the initial motivation is that I'm not doing any rationalization post the object offering or generosity. That I'm not sort of rationalizing to myself that I did it because it helps this person, yada yada yada. So I feel like that initial motivation kind of helps me check that, because then I know that my initial motivation wasn't to help that person; it was to get something back. But if I try to look at it from that person's perspective, how do I check myself from not rationalizing that I'm actually doing it for them and not for myself?
Okay. So let me see if I understand. You're saying that you realize that you kind of have an impure motivation, but you acknowledge that to yourself.
So if I do something for some person and I'm giving them a gift or anything like that, and my initial motivation isn't right, but if I start to look at it from their perspective, then I feel like I'm rationalizing that I did it for them, and that kind of like distracts me from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, so that you have to check in your own mind. Okay. If you try and change your motivation, are you just rationalizing it so that you feel good? Or you check your own mind, or have you really succeeded in changing your motivation? And that's something only you can tell. And so this involves generating, there's a mental factor called introspective awareness that monitors the mind and observes, what kind of thought or feeling am I having right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I'm rationalizing something, there's a certain energy in my mind, and I know very well that I'm lying to myself, basically. Okay? So, if you can develop that sensitivity with your own mind and then check, do you have that energy knowing that you're just kind of justifying or rationalizing? Or has your mind really changed where you actually feel delight and joy at being able to give? So check what you're feeling.
I changed my motivation without rationalizing to myself. So that was kind
Yeah.
of tricky for me to like realize how I would do that.
Yeah. Well, you deliberately create a positive motivation. You think, here's another human being, yeah, who likes to receive not only material things, but respect. They like, they appreciate gifts, and they have good qualities. And I see those good qualities. I want to give a gift to demonstrate that I'm seeing their qualities and respecting them. And so you take the time to actually think like that and try and look at them in that way. And then you check and see, are you rationalizing or has your attitude really changed? Is
Thank you.
that making some sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So you also have to see exactly what the impure motivation is in order to know how to change it. Okay. Another example. Okay. I'm exposing myself a lot in this retreat. I just have a lot of examples of impure giving. That's all. So for many years, when my teacher sent me out to teach, and I'm not qualified. I didn't want to do it. What am I doing teaching people? They need to learn from people who actually know, not from somebody like me. And yet my teacher kept pushing me out to do that. And so for many years, I just felt like, I would teach, but I would just feel like, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. And then after some years, I realized, I am wasting my time and my opportunity by thinking like that. Yeah. And this is why I said you have to see in what is the impure motivation that you're having to know how to change it. So my impure motivation was, I'm just not qualified and this is phony baloney. Okay, now somebody could call that humility. There was probably a speck of humility, but there was probably also a like, I don't really want to do this attitude. Okay, so the way to change it, yeah, I didn't, for years I didn't know how to change it, and I really didn't want to, even though I knew it wasn't a good motivation. And then one day I realized, oh, actually, I'm not giving to them. These people are giving me the opportunity to share the Dharma with them. And the Dharma is something very precious to me. I want to share it with others because it's something that will benefit them. And here I've been going all these years sharing the Dharma, but not feeling much joy doing it. And not recognizing that these people are actually giving to me by providing me the opportunity to do this. So I need to feel joyful. And I need to appreciate that opportunity. And so that was how to change that particular bad motivation.
a work perspective. So like a coworker asking for help, it's more of a transactional setting. And so helping them in the hopes that, if I ever need help from them, they're going to return the favor. And so the settings, I think, a little bit different because, you're in a work setting and you kind of have to do this.
Oh,
But, I'm not doing it because I want to help them. I'm doing it
Yeah.
because in the future sometime, they might
yeah,
help
I'll
me.
need help, and then
Yeah.
they'll feel obliged. Okay, so good. Now we've gotten down to what the issue is. Okay, yeah. So if you think about that, think here's a coworker. Yeah, he needs help. I know what that's like because I've been in situations working where I'm expected to deliver something and I need some help doing it because I need the skill or I'm short on time or whatever the reason is. So I know the difficulty this person is going through right now. And I care that they're unhappy. And I care that they feel this pressure and it's, disturbing them. So because I care about them, I want to help. Yeah. And so you change your motivation like that. And then when you do help, if you're sincerely doing it because you care about them and you want to alleviate their, their tension and the situation they're in, then when you do it, you feel really happy doing it. Yeah. If you do it, but you don't feel happy, then you're doing it out of obligation. And you're doing it to get something back. So you can check of, do I really feel happy doing this? Because, and you come back to your experience when you were in that situation. And I'm sure you've been in that situation. We all have, haven't we? Yeah, have you been in that situation? Or you never need to ask for help?
Time, so
Huh?
been in that situation.
Yeah. I'm glad to be able to help. And then helping doesn't feel like a burden. Okay, good. So this is the same kind of thing that happens here when we are always asked to be doing things that we hadn't been planning on doing. And, you have to vacuum the floor, you have to go do this or go do that. And somebody's just coming up to you and, you were like ready to sit down and have a cup of tea. And somebody says, please, will you, set the room up for this and that or whatever. Okay. And the first reaction is, I don't want to. It's not my job. I'm not on the rota. Yeah. And so we talk about this a lot, don't we? Yeah. And, and then, so then you see, oh, this is part of my Dharma practice. I'm trying to, cherish others more than self. Yeah. And here's one small thing that somebody's asking me to do for 15 minutes, and I can't cherish somebody more than myself in order to do that. Yeah. So it depends your strategy on working with your own mind. But for me, this strategy works. It's, it's like, hey, you're trying to be like this, and now you're behaving in the opposite way. Clean up your act, kid. Okay, so for me, talking to myself that way works. For other people, they just see it as I'm putting myself down and, whatever, but not for me. Anyway, so then if I switch my motivation and I think, okay, it doesn't matter I'm on the rota or not on the rota. I live in this community. I help making, I need to contribute because this whole place exists because each one of us contributes. It's a dependent arising, and it's not just depending on everybody else, it's depending on me too. Yeah, so I want to contribute, and if I contribute, it not only helps the person who's asking me, yeah, but it actually helps me to be able to change my motivation and to see that I can contribute something very simple even that will benefit other people. Okay, so you work on your motivation that way. That's another way to do it. And I'm sure everybody here has their own way of working with their mind in that situation. Okay. Anybody want to share a story of how they work with their mind when somebody asks for help and your first reaction is no? I know hardly anybody else has that happen.
Well, if somebody asks me something and my first is, I don't want to, then I feel what that feels like. And that often will turn my mind because it doesn't feel very good to do that. And you see the look on the person's face, they're disappointed or angry or whatever they are, So it's, for me, it's watching what my action feels like when I do that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about when I said check your own feeling.